everybody. My name is Minerva Keltanen, and I'm the head of exhibitions at the National Museum of Finland. And as you can see at my background is the Häme Castle. I'm just in front of it, and there is the very amazing exhibition by Nick Ervinck. Welcome here to the show, Nick Ervinck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, how do you feel at the moment? Now your exhibition has been open a couple of weeks. How do you think about the whole project afterwards?
Yeah, of course, it was, I think, a very exceptional time because we have, of course, the delay because of Corona. So I think you had even much more time as an artist to dream and to desire to install the show. And of course, installing the show, meeting again everybody, seeing the castle back was wonderful. And to see all the ideas we have prepared on an exhibition plan, to see them becoming a reality. And especially the last moment, the last day, if you can start running around the exhibition and you see all the pieces getting reality. And for me, I think almost every show, it's like creating a world. And even for me, it's still the feeling as a child that you can walk inside your own world and disappear and almost getting in a sort of parallel universum. And I think we succeeded very well in that in the show in Häme Castle.
How do you think about Häme Castle, like a, how would I say, like a background for your exhibition? What do you think about the space? Is it special? And how do you think how it fits there? Or is there something that you especially enjoyed?
Yeah. I'm just back for a few hours from a new show that I was installing in a church, and I had just a talk with one of the newspapers, and for them it was like really exceptional to do a contemporary art show in a church. For me, it's like no questions at all, because I really love to go in dialogue between this kind of old environments and new environments. And even to show my work in the church gets something like a little bit spiritual. And I think Häme Castle is for that. It's like, for me, it's like the biggest present you can give me as an artist, to get this 12th century castle as an environment to play. And I see almost getting my cyborgs getting alive and getting the sort of new knights running around in this castle and maybe making a sort of new defense for it. And especially doing this kind of combination with history is something I really love as an artist. And to be able to select together with you the pieces from the National Museum and putting my almost futuristic cyborgs in dialogue with this kind of medieval armor is for me like a perfect marriage. And the contemporary art is getting like much more interesting because it gets that history value and it's content from time. And also, of course, medieval armor that is maybe not so interesting anymore for all people. But if you place it in combination with contemporary art, it gets a completely new dialogue. And we see how we as a humankind have evolved. And I think that's also the exceptional thing, that this show is giving you a very nice mix between my generation from the games and the science fiction, and really the historical values of heritage and of course the history of arts.
If we talk about your background, how and when did you decide that you want to be an artist? When did you know that for sure?
I think a lot of people are searching for what they want to do in life, and some people don't know it even on an age of 30 what they really want to do. And I'm probably very lucky, because I think from an age of 15 it was really clear I wanted to do something artistic. Of course, to become an artist or to be able to live from that is a whole different kind of story. So I started from an addiction with Lego cubes to an addiction with games. And I started from an age of 15, what is, I think, very early with art education. So I tasted a little bit from architecture, from ceramic, and I graduated in mixed media. I had one fantastic professor that I think learned me to develop my own language. But at the same time, it's really a lot of doing yourself, testing, learning. But I think for me, it was really on a very, very early age that I knew that I would go into that kind of direction.
But you work quite differently at the moment, I suppose. But when you started, you were like a lonely artist, but I understood that now you have a big team, isn't it? Like Rubens or Rembrandt, that you have a lot of assistants who help you to create the works of art. Could you tell about that process?
Of course, it's not yet on that big scale, but of course, it's something that grew as an artist. When I graduated, I had no money, I had no space, and then the virtual world was a fantastic place as an artist to dream of big exhibition, big size sculptures. I could really put my fantasy and imagination in this virtual world. As an artist for a living, I also started with teaching on several art schools. And step by step, you're building up your own story, you're building up your reputation, you get more chances. And from 2011, I stopped with teaching, started with one assistant, the second one, the third one. And especially if you make, of course, sculptures of 12-meter or 15-meter high, it's so labor intensive, even to just place the sculpture and put it upside down to work on a different side. It's something that is impossible to do alone. Or even my computer work, a lot of people are thinking that making art with computer is something very fast. But I have sculptures where we worked maybe for 2,000 hours just designing them in the computer. And of course, that would be possible alone, but then you would be able to make maybe one art piece in a year. And of course, I'm an artist that really loves to create my world, and I'm an artist that loves to make much more pieces than just one in a year.
What do you think about using of plastic at the moment, because it's so controversial as a material?
Of course, it's something that we see that the world is changing a lot, and also why our ideas, how we see society, how we see the planet, what is good and wrong. I think we are definitely in an exciting area that we are changing and developing. What is one thing for me, of course, is trying to find the boundaries of sculpture and what has sculpture been in the past, and how can you put almost like the next step in sculpture. And sculpture has always evolved through new materials, through new techniques. And of course, a material like plastic or like fiberglass is not anymore the material we had 20, 30 years ago. Everybody has to deal with ecology and the best paints in the world to all the paints that were most poisoned. It's not allowed anymore. So you're searching for this kind of new materials, but of course, not for every material we already have like the perfect replacement. So it's definitely something that also as a sculptor, I need to find my ways and to see how this will develop, of course.
And if you think about using of this plastic fiber, how long do you think your sculptures will stay in life? I mean, are they meant to stay forever, or is it little by little that something will happen on the surface and they become fragile, and finally it's like some single pieces spread all over? What will happen to them in the future?
Now, of course, you have artists that really make work that needs to change in time, and they're really happy and they're really searching for work that would transform. Of course, I'm an artist that in my dreams they would be eternal, but of course I'm realistic that nothing is for eternally. I'm sure my sculptures will be there still in 100 years if nobody puts them down. They will definitely survive. The only thing you have that with paint, there's no paint anymore in the world that is UV protected against the sun or the sanding of sand or salt. So on that level, to have really this kind of bright yellow sculptures, like one of the pieces we have at Castle, you will probably have to repaint it every 20 years. But even with bronze or even with stone sculptures, if you will not wax them every time, if you would not clean them, they will disappear. So nothing is for eternal. And of course, as an artist, you always have somewhere deep inside to make something that probably, hopefully, will stay forever. And that reason I'm also changing and going to bronze. Like in the show is one of my first little bronze sculptures, and it's of course a different technique and material, and also putting your work back in that tradition of history. What is of course fiberglass is much more new material, and of course bronze is something we know from the Middle Ages, of course.
Yes. And then I would like to ask about your color, because you use a lot of RAL 1003 yellow. So how it has become your trademark? And because you must know that yellow is also very controversial color. For example, they say about Vincent van Gogh that craziest, more mad he was, more he used the color yellow. But in the Asian countries, bright yellow is also a sacred color. For example, some Buddhist monks, they or the members of the imperial family, they are only allowed to use bright yellow. So it's an interesting color. And during the Black Death time, the houses where you had this disease, they were marked by bright yellow. So it's also in the nature, if you see some animals, some insects, when they have yellow, they are usually the nasty ones. Those who sticks you or bites you or do something, they are poisonous.
Yeah, I'm of course familiar of all the connotations with yellow, and also from the different cultures. But I think it's much more intuitive in the sense that my mother was telling, she went with me as a little kid to the local shop. They already knew to only show like yellow clothes to that little kid. And of course, at an age of 12, I was really like the shy boy. And on an age of 15, I went to a uniform school. What was so crazy to be on an art school, to get an excuse to be creative, but at the same time being obligated to wear a dark blue uniform, to go then from a small town to really the big city. On my 18, I was wearing yellow shoes, yellow socks, yellow pants, yellow sweater, yellow bicycle, yellow cell phone. And of course, I left it now much more to my sculptures. But even some of the pieces in Häme Castle, if you would do them in red, they would getting a very bloody because of the tentacle shapes. If you would do them in blue, they would not work against the sky. In green, they would not work against the nature. And I'm not this kind of typical Belgian Flemish artist that we have this kind of traditional in Belgium, that a lot of artists are working in black and gray, and making art about the heavy stuff of life, death, and the misery of life. I'm much more an artist that even in this crazy time, always looking with a positive eye to the future, and sometimes in a rainy day, trying to bring with my yellow sculptures almost the sun. And it's just the color that really works for my sculpture. Of course, at the show in Häme Castle, you will really see that for the new pieces, the yellow is changing and adapting, and it's much more getting a sort of paint-really skin. It's not anymore this kind of raw 1003 typical signal yellow, but it's really developing also in my work.
So maybe you would like to introduce Freddy Decreus. He will join the discussion.
Yes. Welcome. I welcome Professor Decreus. Freddy, we know each other from 2012, where we were introduced. I had a show in a Gallo-Romanian museum. It was one of my really first big shows where I did a dialogue with actually the history. And Freddy was introduced to me as the writer for the catalog. And I think we did already probably, I think, 100 projects together now. And I think he wrote the most text of my work as a writer and several books. And I think we really desire each other's passion. And I think one of the most sentences that I will remember in the eternity is one sentence from a text where he shows and explains my work with the blue princesses and the yellow demons. And I think that's also a perfect sense to enter into my world and to enter into the exhibition of Häme Castle. So Freddy, very well welcome, and thank you to join us this evening.
Thank you, Nick.
Good evening. So Freddy, you have followed Nick Ervinck's career for a long time. What would you say? What is the most special in him as an artist?
So amazing to have the opportunity to collaborate with artists in general. They're thinking differently. They have everything in the mind and in their hands at the same time. I'm an academic, so I'm supposed to use my head and forget the rest of my body. But for Nick, the idea that he is continuously asking questions and invites us to change our perceptions of the world. He's not staying with that yellow color. He has been using all different kinds of colors, but I think nearly every year he's changing his approach, his technical approach, but also his vision on life. He's living just like we are doing, day by day, looking at the world and transforming the world. And so he's uniting a couple of disciplines at the same time. He's not just a painter or a craftsman or a visual artist who is using computers. No, he's using so many things. I think when you put together all his work, you have a complete city. You have hundreds and hundreds of works that can populate a complete city of his own. He has been playing when he was younger, the game, the God games with pixels and Lego blocks and so on. So this is an artist who wants to create his own universe, and not only one universe, couples of universes. He's showing a whole series of possible metaverses, a number of possibilities in creating worlds and globalities. So he's stimulating us again and again. That's why he's my big friend. I like him for the creativity in his mind. He's creating every time again new questions. It has to do with the radiation. His last works, his mask and his human mutations, they all are illustrating the same kind of belief. The world is fluid. It's not classical. It's not tradition anymore. But something is happening very deeply. So he's mixing the disciplines in a trans-boundary way, transliminal way. He's connecting in so many different styles the main questions of life. What is it to be a man? What is it to have a life? Huh? We are responsible, but nobody created us with the idea that all of us had to be happy. We have to do it. And the artist, the philosopher in him, is helping me, is helping everybody who's watching his works of art, I think, to detect what is essential in life. Never stick to the old stuff. You are, as a man, undefined. You don't know what are you carrying in your genetics, in your destination, destiny, what is it? Huh? So you have to discover it all by yourself. And this is the beautiful part of being an artist. He's standing next to us. He punches us.
Well, Nick is like a Renaissance artist.
Yes, indeed.
He's dealing with so many things. That's true.
Yeah. So especially the idea that we have to discover the unknown. The Siomet helmet. This is a classical stuff, but there is more in it than that. It's always an invitation to see more, to think more profoundly, to go deeper than before. That's why it's very valuable. It goes very deeply.
So now you mentioned this helmet. What is the story behind the helmet? Because there is this Roman italic helmet, and it's attached to the 18th century classical image of a house. So what is the story behind? Is there some story?
Oh, I could never answer you that there is
Nick?
one story. Huh? There are a number of possible stories, and that's the main idea of art. Huh? Art has to create emotions and possibilities, escapes. So I think everybody has to detect it for himself or herself. Huh? What are you lacking in life? What are your desires? What is the help? Looking at this helmet, what do you need? It has to do with beauty? Has it to do with history? Of course, for me, this is Julius Caesar, the Roman helmet, and that is Mozart, 18th century. These are two very popular guys who influenced my way. As a Western citizen, the West have been structured by the Romans by the 18th century, but there is so much more that has not been said when you just take these two. History is a selection. History is a selection made and written afterwards by those in power. So those in power now, those who have the power of our imagination now, select two levels and make a new piece of art. So
I think
it has always been like that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think for when you ask what it does mean for me, it is a head, it is a human head for me. And he's opening this head. He's a brain surgeon for me. So what is happening today in the latest developments of medicine, in the brain scan, what is happening now? We are looking to the same head. We became kind of gods with new technology, just like Nick is using in other statues, in other works of art. His way of dealing with the finest merchandise to create very special heads, very special. They look like prototypes in a laboratorium. Huh? So he's opening all the time for so many people at the same time. He's opening our mind, opening the imagination. Now then, sometimes classical items, sometimes very blob-like, more fluid ones. Always the same question. Life is full of mutation. Why are we in such a process? And why were there whole centuries that progress like this was forbidden? Look at Iraq for the moment, and you know enough. This is not possible there. Not that beautiful color yellow.
I think what is also really important is that an artist is always trying to let you see in a different world. We are all programmed, and we are all very programmed by our education, by our culture, and I think that artists are liking to disprogram and unprogram you and to see the world again on a free level. We are so used to have a house that has 4 walls and a rooftop. But I think that an artist is also, especially coming from Belgium and having René Magritte, we are this kind of surrealists that are dreaming from different worlds, from better worlds, from different parallels, and trying to give a different view on the world. And I think that's so important that today we don't learn anymore to look to the world. We don't learn anymore to feel the world. And I think that's the beautiful thing, that as an artist, you're looking differently, you're feeling differently, and you're inviting the audience to take you on this journey and to look together with you on a different side.
What is your favorite era or century if we think both of you? Oh, I can guess what is Freddy's favorite period, but Nick, if you think back to the history, what is your favorite?
Oh, that's really a difficult question. I think I'm more from the generation, of course, from, let's say, MTV, the TV, the movies. I think we are really this kind of generation that really grabs everything as a sponge and really makes this kind of new mix. If you see to an artist like Henry Moore, he had a bookshelf of 2 meter by 2 meter, what was huge at that time. That was a huge knowledge, a huge value. But today we have all these libraries, we have internet. Everybody that is a book lover has at least 10 times more books than a book lover from the past century. So of course our world has so changed, and I cannot say that I like the Renaissance or the medieval or even the futuristic science fiction. It's really this kind of mix, and to see all this kind of beautiful times and value we have, and using them as a sort of ingredients for my work, and to make new pieces with the ingredients of history is the most fantastic area for me.
Freddy and Nick, question for you. If you would bring just one thing from the past to the modern day, to the contemporary time, what it would be?
I think it would be the Acropolis.
Okay.
And the Parthenon on top of the Acropolis, because this is my favorite era. This is the 5th century, because for the first time in Western history, this is a kind of synthesis. Everything came together, East meets West. So it is man meets woman, very delicate balances that has been discovered. But when you see in the rest of history, like Deleuze or Foucault, all the French philosophers, they all went back to that century. The 5th and the 4th century, they were reading Plato, they were reading the tragedies. So for the first time, we have a kind of a boundary, something that unites all the beauty, all the philosophical terms, a time of invention. This is amazing. Right? Has nearly never happened. It was very patriarchal, though. It was the invention of the male head, the hierarchical structure. But for the first time, I see on top of this Acropolis, with or without a glass of ouzo, that doesn't matter. But you see beauty in action. You see the profile of a warrior, the way that he stands on both of his feet, that he is stable, that he has the courage to think, to stand, to watch, standing in the middle of things. This is amazing. This is amazing. So with all the prejudices and the other aspects that are not so apparent, many deep structures are not okay. But there's a selection of values that for the first time, the mythological way of putting your life together. This is the 5th century of mythology and tragedy, but then it was over. And you have the 4th century of philosophy and the science. And it's going up like that till our time. So it's like a father and a mother. You cannot choose a child. Who are you loving most? Every century is perfect in its way, because it has been preparing where we are now. Not that it's a good kind of progress, on the contrary. But you see the stepping stones. Man is responsible for his own creativity. It's beautiful. We are free human beings. And Nick is a very good example of that. The way that he's enjoying his artistic freedom is what happens all over the world now. Who is really free in his mind. So let me choose the Greeks.
What would you bring from the past?
Oh, that's such a difficult question. Of course, there have a lot of art pieces being disappeared, or artists that have even destroyed themselves, all their sculptures. So there are some artists really guesses or sketches from how they have probably been looking. So one thing would be amazing to really see how they would really be in these sculptures that has disappeared. And on another side, I'm also very interested in science, and I would love to see like this kind of books of Leonardo da Vinci that already had this kind of knowledge that suddenly disappeared like 500 years from our world, or even the fleet of boats from the Chinese that were like 100 boats that were 3 times the size of the boat that Columbus used to go over to the US, to America. This kind of almost fairy tales, but that actually were reality. That is something that is so crazy, how by political reasons, how by developing of times and different laws and conquers, sometimes evolution disappeared for centuries and then was reinvented or picked up again. And that's something that is probably also very fascinating for me, how that happens and what is the reason, or is it just all coincidence?
So maybe we will have a look at the video about Siumet. Assistant will show it.
The Nick Ervinck Show.
Can you say the name?
Siumet.
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 Eli teoksen nimi on Siumet.
And how would you describe it?
To me it looks like a Roman centurion helmet or
Samurai-kypärä.
No ihan ensin kun sitä katsoo tästä edestäpäin, niin sehän on ihan selvästi rakennus.
No se voisi olla semmoinen niin kuin avaruusmuovitalo tai semmoinen vastaava.
and a house. I think a wealthy person could build a manor like this.
Mut sitten kun sitä katsoo täältä sivusta, niin se näyttää semmoiselta medieval ritarin kypärältä mun mielestä.
Or it could be a museum or something.
Se, että mä voisin asua tuossa talossa.
The Nick Ervinck Show.
Any comments?
Yeah, fantastic to see, and also I think we already talked a little bit at that, but I think that's so important that, of course, as an artist, I have my own story, but I think if you can grab an audience, if you can trigger their fantasy, their imagination, I think it's already a first succession and a first step as an artist. And I think that's, of course, a beautiful thing that we are stuck in our own thinking pattern. And as an artist, and especially with Siumet, you're showing almost this kind of surrealistic world where maybe buildings could be transformers, and maybe our buildings could start to walk, or buildings, or we itself could be a building. And it's really playing with this kind of fantasy, but at the same time, it's also telling about what is the architecture of our body, what are we as a human mankind, what is architecture today, what is the function, and why has it developed like that. And especially now, a lot of the houses are just looking like that because of its economical and financial reality. While if we would have different possibilities, we would of course live in a different world.
There was something I thought to ask. What it was? Let me think about it.
Going back.
It was something related to the helmet. Yes, because maybe I go ahead and continue with this Siumet, but it came to my mind because you make a lot of those cyborgs and you mentioned transformers. So could you describe what these transformers, what they have meant to you, how important part they are in your ideas and when you are making art? That have you played yourself with them?
Yeah, of course, and of course also with Legos that you could transform from one sculpture to another sculpture. And I think I'm especially interested in this kind of transformation, not the one thing or the other thing, but when it's really transforming and going from the one to the other. And I worked a lot with 3D animations. So I worked with years and years of 3D animations, and then I choose to really be this kind of sculptor. So as a sculptor or even as a painter, you're always telling your story in one image. So I don't have sculptures today with robotica or moving things, but at the same time, each piece that I'm designing is almost having the feeling of being a transformer. It's almost having the feeling of being in transformation and every moment jumping from their pedestal. And I think all my sculptures have really this kind of dynamic, this kind of movement in them. And I was really inspired by the first pioneers of photography that have this kind of movement and trying to grab the movement of human mankind, of horses, of all those things. But at the same time, the futurists that really try to get the whistling tail of the dog and into one picture frame. And I think that's one of the reasons that this kind of transformation interests me so much. And at the same time, this kind of toys are developed so good. It's crazy how one person and probably a whole team developed years and years a sort of toy that can transform from one thing to another thing. And you have, of course, the simple versions that are more the kids' toys. But then you almost have like the grown-up versions that are really complicated. They are almost, for me, sculptures and it's almost a science project on its own.
How important is the language for you? Because you have created your own language. And what do you, Freddy, think about that language? Because you are a classicist.
Well, this language is an attempt to classify things in his own scripture. He has discovered a known alphabet. So he's changing titles, he's reversing letters, and so it's his personal way of ordering the world. Huh? The Homo classificans, the man who is willing to have a grip, who wants to have a grip on everything and uses special ways of referring to that world. Huh? This is one part of the Nick Ervinck that I know so well. The other part is the complete freedom in the way that he's producing art. It is has nothing to do with classifying or with logic. It has to do with fluidity. It has to do with swelling, with exploding, with the way that a nomadic kind of energy is getting through our lives. It's in our body, it's full of energy. The cosmos is full of energy. Then it meets somewhere. And in order to have a kind of a systematized place in his mind, on his computer, he had to develop, because he had made maybe thousands of prototypes and works of art. You can call them Lily or Jacqueline or whatever, but at the same at sometimes you're finished with the names. They don't say enough. Huh? So he sticks to those abbreviations. And so often enough, you turn away the consequences, the following of the letters, and you have another title. Huh? I would like to return to your Geomet because I have grandchildren. Huh? I have grandchildren, and my question to them is, when will come to your museum, is what happens during the night? Do you think the night and the museum that they become alive? Huh? So their imagination is cyborgs, warriors. What happens when the lights turn off? Are they talking to each other like in the three movies, Night at the Museum, the Ben Stiller? So there's a lot that triggers the imagination of the children, I discovered, when they are looking at the works of Nick. All the transformers and the cyborgs, all the heads, also Geomet, that is a head. But can it talk? Is something changing? when they are not looking. So there's a creativity that he's generating in the minds of the children and the adults too. So he's provoking, he's creating all the time. And yes, he needs a special kind of labeling. For me, that is the most uninteresting part of his work. He has to do it for himself.
We are still here, but I think Freddy has disappeared for a little moment. So I will pick up. But of course, it's something I think as an artist, you're creating this world. And then like Freddy already told, it's for me definitely a world that I'm creating to try to understand this world. And of course, I'm also this control freak coming from my games, that I really try to order my own world and creating my own systems to, I think, understand this world better and to find also, of course, our reason of existence and to find the reason why certain things happen.
But how would you translate in English or Belgian, or what is the background for the name?
A lot of my works has been starting from putting the letters upside down in a sort of anagram. So in CU, you still have the word huis in Flemish house. So there are still some references, but it doesn't really matter. It's like creating a world that does not exist, a word that has no political connotations, no connotations in a different language. And it's playing. I started the Nickipedia, so you can Google to the Nickipedia instead of the Wikipedia, and it's really entering my world, and it's creating almost an identity for all the pieces. And a lot of artists sometimes ask you what is the ambition or why you're doing, and you could say, am I working for my work, or is my work working for me, or is my sculptures my boss, or am I my boss of my sculptures? And it's like a sort of obligation. You go to your art that you're building up, and it's something that will fulfill your life forever.
So I think Freddy dropped from the line.
Yes, I think that's also the problem with, of course, our virtual world, that we still have no control. Even if we, as a human, want control of our life and our society, it's unfortunately impossible.
Yeah, there happens something that you cannot control.
I just get a phone from Freddy, so yeah.
Hey, is assistant there?
Geen probleem. Ik denk dat we ook al een heel mooi gesprek hebben. We moesten terugwerken, geef gerust een seintje en anders trekken we ons plan. Ja, veel succes, hè. So it's even crazier. He lost power in his house. So that's again the human that wants to have control, but then the reality that takes the control away, of course.
Okay. Well, incredible things happen indeed.
Voilà.
Well, it's like the mutation.
Yes.
Like in your work, you don't know where the world is going.
Hello, and even with the background we can play, suddenly you can have like an erupting volcano in the background, or maybe even the night is starting to attack. But I think that's a beautiful thing of art, of course. I think I really believe artists are people that feel their time, and that also probably are before the time that is coming, and trying to think about things. And of course you're making a sort of beautiful fantasy world, but at the same time you're thinking about what are we doing with this planet, with manipulating of plants, with enforcing our human body with technology, and if you're against or you're for it, some things are just a natural evolution that we have to undergo. And it has, of course, like every century, we have positive and negative things, and also on evolution there will come incredible new and better things, but also things that will be very bad for human mankind.
Hello, Freddy. Welcome back.
Voilà.
Yeah. Yeah. What they nowadays always repeat, or like a common saying, that there is no planet P. So there are like very big challenges in here. But what do you think, Nick, if you think about your future as an artist? Where do you want to go? What do you want to proceed in this life?
I think of course, in this Corona year, I had a lot more time to think of that, and I think you want to fulfill your possibilities as a human. Every human has some talents, some possibilities in life, and I really think I want to put my personality, my experience to the maximum human that I can be with all the chances and DNA I got. And that's of course something very difficult, because it's not alone that I will choose that. It will depend of chances you have in life, bad and good things that will happen with me in the future. But I think it's, for me, the most important thing that I can stay developing as an artist. I think that's the most important thing. And the moment that you cannot grow anymore as an artist, I think it's horrible. So I hope that
And it's time to end.
I hope I can stay growing and stay developing, and be triggered by the world and by my work to stay putting the maximum, and to always go this kind of next step further.
Okay. For my last words in this Nick Ervinck show, I will invite all the visitors and guests to see the amazing show at the Häme Castle. And there is also this other exhibition in Belgium, in the old cathedral. Could you mention a couple of words about it?
Yeah, so I had really luck to I got 40 this year, and now I have my own church. So from the city Middelkerke, I got the possibility to open my own art center. So I have transformed a formal church into my personal playground, my personal exhibition, where I'm showing a show with 40 works of mine, but also 40 works of my collection pieces that I exchanged with my fellow artists. And then I have another show in Bruges, in a 15th century chapel that is already from the 15th century and the same family. So it's a family chapel, and they have, for the first time, the family grave has been put away for restoration. So it's been the first time in 500 years that the grave has actually disappeared from the chapel, and I got the opportunity to make a new major art piece to replace it for the months that it will be in renovation. So for me, these are of course fantastic projects where I can do this kind of dialogue with an old and a past. And the first show in the church is much more the traditional work that people know from me. In Bruges, it's a focus on my ceramic piece. And I think the show in Häme Castle is almost like entering my world, entering the Nick Ervinck show, where you go from the one team and the one room to the other world. And it's almost like a little retrospective where you can really jump into my work and go from the one team to the other team. So for me, that's one of the most amazing shows I could do until now. And I really hope I can develop that path much further in the future.
Great. And Häme exhibition is until 28th of November, so people have a lot of time to see it. Also, you, Freddy, you are most welcome to come and see it.
Thank you.
Now we have a little bit easier with Corona, so again, it's possible to travel. And there is also a little kiteboarding tour in YouTube. So Nick, you are telling about the exhibition about it, so it's possible to follow that in Finnish National Museum's YouTube channel. So I guess that was all for the time being. So it was lovely to have you here and have a chat about your career, and true fan of yours, Freddy. We are very delighted and hear about how your career is proceeding.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddy. Thank you, Minerva. It's also wonderful to collaborate with you too.
Yes, thank you. So, what shall I say? Bye.
Voilà.
The Nick Ervinck Show.